Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about that huge game happening in Yankee Stadium on Saturday. Notre Dame at Army, technically at Army. It's going to be a really, really fun game. I did pick Notre Dame. I'll be honest. I picked against my heart there. I would love for it to see Army get that win, to stay undefeated, to really have a moment in the sun, but I just don't see it unfolding. So I went with Notre Dame there. We'll see what happens in that one. But let's get into the Big 12 breakdowns because we got two huge games this upcoming weekend that could just outright decide what the Big 12 championship is and who has a shot to possibly go to the CFP from this conference. And we'll start with this one. It is a very, very interesting one that, frankly, we wouldn't be breaking down in normal circumstances, but Kansas has been anything but normal the last little bit. They have beaten two teams that they probably had no business beating in Iowa State and BYU the last couple of weeks, and last week BYU was -3 against Kansas. It's exactly what Colorado is. Now, Colorado is on the road, so it's a little bit of a different scenario, but something to watch there. Definitely something that I think Kansas likes to see, that other team favored by 3 points. That's right where their sweet spot is. But at the end of the day, it is going to be really interesting to watch this game for a number of reasons, but mainly the battle of styles is going to be really interesting. Obviously, Colorado is all pass, and there's no doubt about that. They do 60% pass plays. They do not really have a run game to speak of most of the games. And then for Kansas, the run game leads the way. About 57% of the time they run the ball. Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, even Jalen Daniels getting in the run game, a huge part of that offense, and likely will test this Colorado team that's been really good against the run the last couple of weeks, but will continue to test that strength for Colorado. And then this Kansas offense has been cooking the last little bit. Before that BYU game, they had scored 27 points in 6 straight games. They had been rolling right along, and although their defense had been up and down throughout that time, obviously it was incredible last week. It was not so incredible against Iowa State and against a couple other teams throughout their season. But at the end of the day, they're probably going to have to put up points in this one. It's probably a game that you're going to get a little bit of a shootout if Kansas is going to get this one done. That being said, if that defense shows up the way that it did last week, maybe they can slow down this Colorado offense just a little bit. On the Colorado side, the pressure is mounting. There's no doubt about that. They've been cool, calm, collected throughout this time. But to me, this is the biggest test since Kansas State, in my opinion. I think this is different in a lot of different ways. Maybe not the best team they played when they went to Texas Tech. That's probably a better team. But I also think with all of the pressure, with all of the stuff going in and Kansas rolling right along, I do think that adds a little bit to this. So I do think this is a big-time test for them, and it's going to be one of those moments. I've said it pretty much all year. It's the biggest game in Deion's Colorado era, no doubt about that. Obviously, next week could be a bigger one, and the week after that, hopefully, will be a bigger one for Colorado fans. But they need to execute at a very high level, especially defensively on Saturday, or they might just have to deal with a little bit of that Kansas magic that's been unfolding the last couple of weeks. But some players to watch. Will Shepard is someone that I think is still getting a little bit undervalued when we talk about Colorado. I think that offense, we saw it early in the season. It wasn't quite that Colorado offense that we expected to see. And a lot of that had to do with the offensive line coming along and doing their thing, obviously. But I do think a lot of it had to do with Will Shepard wasn't quite getting the ball quite enough early on in the year. And now he's so dangerous. He is the biggest 50-50 threat, deep ball, just go up and get it type guy on that team. And you add that to LeJontay Wester and Travis Hunter and all the other guys, it's a nightmare to deal with. So he's someone that they're going to have to try to shut down, knock out those big-time plays that he makes. If you can do that, then everything should be in front of you, and then you just have to tackle, which is going to be a rather tall order, but at the end of the day, makes it a little bit easier than dealing with 6'5" up in the air. And then you got Camron Craig, a really important player on the back end of that defense. Travis Hunter takes all of the headlines, as he probably should, but this is a very talented player both in run support and in pass defense, and I think run support is where you're going to want him on Saturday, no doubt about that. He's going to be the guy that you're going to want to drop down into the box and play an extra guy in it because you got a couple of big-time running backs coming at you, and I think Daniel Highshaw is going to be a huge one for Kansas. I think he's a huge player for this game, not necessarily because he's a better player than Devin Neal, but because he's a little bit more of a bruiser. I think if Kansas is going to be able to win this game, it is about wearing down that Colorado team just a little bit with your run game. Also, you are going to have to hit big plays, and you should have a couple of openings to do that. But I do think wearing down this front seven, wearing down this team that hypothetically you should be able to, I think will open up a lot of doors for them. Daniel Highshaw leaning on that team could be a little bit much for them on Saturday. And then you got Dean Miller, a very talented defensive end for Kansas, 5.5 sacks on the year. You got to get after Shedeur. If you're going to be able to win this game, you have to make that offensive line that has really come a long way for Colorado, has been playing good football. You got to make them look like they did last year. If you're going to tear them to pieces, then Colorado's offense is going to have a lot of trouble being able to get this pass game going, especially downfield, the way that really makes that offense special. So it's going to be awesome to watch, and him, along with all the other edge rushers, are going to have their hands full. But some keys to the game. Who wins the time of possession is very interesting to me. I tend to believe it's going to be Kansas, but at the end of the day, both of these offenses are explosive. They're both dangerous, and Kansas has been more explosive over the last couple of weeks. Both defenses are solid, but absolutely can be exposed. So which is the team that can kind of elongate drives? Which is the team that can get down into the 20 and then just run the ball 5 straight times, get into the end zone? You would think it would be more a little bit Kansas, and maybe we'll lean a little bit more that direction. But I do think Colorado has that ability as well. And also, on the other part of that, even if they lose the time of possession, Colorado has the ability to respond very quickly and make life really tough for Kansas. But it'll be interesting to watch that unfold. And then the Buffs' pressure is mounting. There's really nothing to be said more than no one fully understands what this pressure is until you get there. Colorado can prep themselves as well as they possibly can for this game and all the games coming forward. When you walk into that building and you understand that you are the top team in the conference now, well, technically not by the rankings, but I think they should be. They are one of the top teams in the conference now. You have a chance to take a full stranglehold of the conference. That pressure gets a little bit more mounted. Now, they've handled it incredibly well throughout the season. We'll see if they can handle it really well on Saturday. And then you're going to have a really fun quarterback duel. Jalen Daniels started the year very slowly, but he's really come along, been a great the back half of this season. Darius Sanders, been one of the best quarterbacks in the country pretty much all year. He's been absolutely incredible, and both are outright required to make a couple of big off-schedule plays throughout this game. The question is, who can make them more and who can make them more consistently? That's probably going to be a huge decider in this game. And frankly, I went back and forth about 10 times on this game. I didn't know which way to go. I'm going to go with the team that I think is just rolling right now. I think Colorado's rolling downhill. I think it's going to be really, really hard to stop this team. I'm going to go with them to win 31-27. I think Kansas has a really real shot in this game. I do think they will fight tooth and nail, and I think it'll be a really fun game, no doubt about it. I just can't pick against Colorado right now. They're rolling right along. They're the best team in the Big 12 as far as I'm concerned, and I think they're going to be a really tough team to deal with for Kansas, especially with that offense. But going to be a really fun game. I'll take Colorado, and they might just punch their ticket to the Big 12 championship. And then we got BYU-Arizona State, a ranked matchup over there in the Big 12 now that those rankings came out yesterday. This one's going to be fun. Whoever wins this one, likely on their way to Arlington. Obviously, they still have one more game to go after this, but definitely going to be really interesting. If whoever wins this one, if they don't get to Arlington, I'll be rather surprised, and it will be because chaos just happened all over the place. But BYU could go from undefeated to out in 2 weeks. Arizona State could continue to rise and be one of the biggest stories in college football over the back half of this season. But BYU has won a lot of games in that 50-50 area. They've won a lot of games where they've won the turnover battle. They didn't quite last week. They won a lot of games where they were great on 3rd and 4th down. They weren't quite last week. Again, in the red zone, they've been absolutely incredible. They weren't quite last week. So the question is, can they get that mojo back? Can they do the things that they've been able to do for the first 9 games, but they weren't quite able to do for the 10th? Has all of that gone away? Or was that just a blip on the radar where they can get back on the right track for this week, win the turnover battle, get back to business as usual in some ways for BYU? For Arizona State, they feel like a boulder rolling downhill right now. They are rolling, and it's one of those things where it's Cam Scatterbu, one of the best players in the country, one of the best running backs in the country. All that being said, last week they didn't really have him all that much. He had 25 carries. He only had 74 yards. He wasn't necessarily a huge part of that offense, but Sam Leavitt took over that game. He was absolutely incredible. I believe had over 300 yards passing, a lot of that to Jordan Tyson, but it's going to be another game where he's going to have to be huge and probably make a couple of plays because that BYU front seven is a really good group. And we'll talk about that actually a little bit later in the show. But all that being said, BYU, they are giving up almost 150 on the ground. So it's not necessarily like they're the best run defense in the world. Maybe Cam Scatterbu can get going. I do think BYU is going to put a little bit more attention there and trust the back end just a little bit. But I do think it's going to be one of those things where can they slow down this BYU rushing attack? Can they do the thing that is going to be really tough to do and not a lot of teams have been able to do it? But Kansas State was able to last week, so maybe that's the difference. Maybe teams have figured out how to kind of slow down Cam Scatterbu just a little bit. If BYU can do that, then you're putting another game in the hands of Sam Levitt, and we'll see if he can respond against a much better pass defense than he played last week. But these two teams are going to be going all out. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be everything for them, huge implications. One of those games that wouldn't be quite as big if BYU won last week, but now it might just be a playing game for that game in Arlington, which is going to be just incredible to watch unfold. But Darius Lasser is someone on the BYU team that I think when we talk about this BYU team, it's all about the different, Jake Retzlaff. It's all about the quarterback. It's all about some of the players defensively. Darius Lasser has been a huge player for this team down the stretch of the season. He's been a great wide receiver, especially next to Chase Roberts. He's been a great other option, and I think when you have him, you can do a lot of really, really great things. You can open up a number of things for other players on the field. You can do a number of things where he plays different positions and plays around the stuff. He's a very veteran guy. I think he's hugely important, especially just down the stretch of the season, to be kind of that go-to guy, I suppose, for Jake Retzlaff on those big plays. I think you're going to find number 5 a lot on those. And then Jacob Robinson, a cornerback for BYU, he's got 3 picks on the season. And frankly, if you can get a couple of picks in this game, it's going to be hard for Arizona State to come back. They've done a really, really good job of limiting possessions, of not turning the ball over, playing really good defense. If you put them in tough positions on the defensive side of the ball by getting a turnover, this thing could get interesting, and maybe a lot of that Arizona State magic goes away pretty quickly. And then Shaman Metoyer, I think, is a huge player for this game, the tight end for Arizona State. When you talk, Arizona State's pass game has not necessarily been the big part of their game. Obviously, it was last week with Jordan Tyson having a huge game. You got to make sure that you have more guys to go to. You got to make sure you have a tight end, maybe another wide receiver that you can throw the ball to, because the reality is, if BYU wants to take one guy away, they can do that. If they want to take Jordan Tyson away, they have the ability to do that. They maybe can't take away as many guys, especially a tight end. If you're running the ball effectively, he could be a huge player that you just get on a dump-off pass and he goes 15 yards down the field on a huge third down. So definitely someone to watch where they might just be chasing around Jordan Tyson. Number 7 might get open pretty quickly, and then you have a big play, no doubt about it. And then Xaven Alfred, a very important player. He's bounced around a little bit throughout his career, but a very talented back-end player for this team. And I think you look at this BYU team, they're probably going to run the ball pretty consistently. That is kind of what they do. They're a little bit more balanced than Arizona State is, but definitely a little bit of a battle back and forth, no doubt about that. And I do think when you look at BYU, a lot of those big-time pass plays have been the ones that have really opened up games, whether it's Akila Marion or to Chase Roberts or to Darius Lasser. They're going to have to make sure that they eliminate those. And also, you get one pick in this game, that crowd might come alive and never go away. So that's the huge-time thing here. If Arizona State can get those big-time pop plays, it might be hard for BYU to really hear themselves think, frankly. And that's my first key to the game, actually. Arizona State's home crowd. This is a moment that they have not had in a very long time around Tempe, Arizona. They have a head coach that I know for a fact is going to be very gassed up for this game. Might just be around campus today, telling people to get to the game on Saturday. But at the end of the day, the crowd is going to be on fire. BYU, they're just going to have to keep their composure. In a week where you absolutely need a win, you now have to deal with a road atmosphere to get it. If they were able to win last week, they could drop this game, but they can't do it anymore. It's going to be a really tough one. And then run game consistency is a huge part of this game. I think both teams have great running backs. LJ Martin for BYU, Cam Scadaboo for Arizona State. Both these teams are going to have to get production on the ground if they want to open up some of the things downfield that could really change this game. So who can get this thing going? Which offensive line can win the battle is going to be hugely important, and who can just get that consistent run game? Not necessarily 15 yards and then 3 1-yard rushes, but 4 yards, 5 yards, and then 8 yards. That's going to be a huge part of this, and definitely will wear down one of these defenses one way or the other. And then handling the moment. That is a big part of really every team around the country right about now that's still in the hunt. You got to handle pressure that has not been there for a lot of these teams. Arizona State and BYU definitely included in that group. The implications are as high as they have ever felt. Jake Retzlaff, Sam Levitt, and pretty much every other player on the team is going to have to handle that one way or the other. So it's going to be a really, really fun game. Cannot wait to see that one unfold. But I'm going to go with Arizona State. They feel like they're rolling downhill right now. They feel like they're going to be really hard for them to stop Cam Scadaboo. And the way that Sam Levitt's playing right now, I'm not going to bet against him. He's playing such good football and definitely a guy that I think can win this game for Arizona State. So I'm going to pick the Sun Devils. I'm going to pick them in Colorado to be in the catbird seat as we head into the last week of the season for the Big 12. But a lot of stuff can unfold, no doubt about that, and some craziness can unfold in these two games. If Kansas wins, stuff happens. A lot of stuff happens in the Big 12, and we will break it all down as it does, if that does unfold. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we got to talk about some upset alerts. I got 6 for you. 4 of them are SEC teams, so it gives you an idea of how crazy this weekend could be in the SEC, but we'll break it down right after this, so stick with us.